we've come to aid ye! Oh noes! It's Calamity Ganon!
He thought it was your friends, but it was me, Ganon!
Breath of the Wild. It's been over a year since that trailer for the sequel, and up until recently, we've had no hope of anything new for Zelda in 2020. That is until, quite literally a few weeks ago, they announced and teased a prequel to Breath of the Wild, The Age of Calamity. We've been promised huge battles across Hyrule, telling the story of the past wars occurring 100 years prior to the game Breath of the Wild. By that notion, we can all assume it's going to be canon, and this is extremely exciting in theory, but that's not really what we're here to talk about today, thinkers. I think, though, that it's safe to say we are all really excited to play as the champions, and honestly, I'm really looking forward to the Legend of the Champions Calamity. I mean, just look at how awesome their abilities are. Anyway, the backstory of the champions is something we've barely even scratched the surface of. And whilst I could, in this video, speculate upon how the game takes place among other things, there's something more pressing I want to talk about. The elephant that's been in the room for some time. For all of us. Something far more important. Something far more darker and sinister. Something we've been dying to know for the longest time. Just what happened to the champions? How were they bested by the Blights? Or more specifically, how did they become the Blights? Well, thinkers, open up Task Manager and run thonk.exe because it's time for a thought process. Alright, so by now most of the community has played through and completed Breath of the Wild, but out of courtesy to those who haven't, here's a spoiler warning for a game released in 2017. Now that all said, let's go right ahead and dive straight in. Collectively, most of us have by now well and truly understood the champions fell and died some time ago, slain before the twisted, malevolent forms of the Blights. I find it quite odd, however, that when you slay each of the Blights, then and only then can the spirit of each champion be freed and take on a completely realized form. From this, it can be logical to somehow conclude that the Blights are actually the champions. Whoa, wait up. This sounds kinda ridiculous, right? There's literally no way, right? Well, maybe. Just give it a moment. Looking at the strange blend of Sheikah mechanics and metallic parts contrasted by the corrupted organic matter formed clearly with the dark powers of Calamity Ganon, they formulate the ferociously dark and spectered forms of the Blights, their forms each aptly named after the elemental powers they wield as well as the elemental powers of the champions. This parallel between the Blights and the champions doesn't simply end here. Remember when we first reached Impa? She retells the tale of a great war some many years ago to defeat Calamity Ganon with the powers of the champions, the hero, the princess, and lastly, the Sheikah's technology. When the tapestry finally pans out, we see the divine beasts and their champions all in the respective corners of this tapestry surrounding Calamity Ganon. Isn't it strange that each champion looks far more mechanical? Their appearances are extremely similar to the form of the Blights. Why? Why indeed. Before that, let's take a look at each of the Blights collectively. Within each of the divine beasts, upon entering the chambers in what is essentially the cockpit or control center of the respective divine beast, lies a Blight Ganon. When Link interacts with the central hub, which is strangely quite large, we trigger off a boss event. Blue Sheikah energy will emanate within the room, gathering and forming as a Blight teleports into the chamber. Placing each champion beside the Blight forms, we can already draw similarities. Water Blight, Fire Blight, and Thunder Blight each have categorically the same melee weapons as their champion counterparts. Wind Blight Ganon also has a ranged weapon, an arm cannon, to match the ranged bow weapon of Revali. Collectively, each Blight also uses the same powers as the champions. Fire Blight has a barrier much in the same like Daruk has. Thunder Blight can summon powerful blasts of lightning just like Urbosa can at the snap of a finger. Wind Blight can summon huge gales of wind just like Revali. And lastly, Water Blight Ganon, who can manipulate water just like Mipha. And this, by the way, is confirmed. Mipha, as shown in the Age of Calamity tease, fires off massive jets of water at her opponents. At first glance, it's startling how similar the Blight's weapons and abilities really are. But when you look closely at the bodies of the Blights themselves, you'll see the shape of these mechanical monstrosities is surprisingly quite similar, like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, although perhaps that's not really hitting the nail on the head well enough. No, what I have in mind to suggest is far more along the lines of an action hero movie like Iron Man. This is where the tapestry comes back into mind, and we return back to the Sheikah and their technology. Thinking back, remember that these monstrosities are canonically made up from Sheikah technology. Also, remember how at the start of each boss fight, we see them appear from the blue energy of the Sheikah. And remember how when we defeat them, they vanish and disappear in a similar flash of energy. Well, that's just it. They aren't being created from the energy. Instead, they are actually teleporting using the exact same magic as the Sheikah Slate, as seen when Link fast travels. The parts found on each Blight all seem to fit and work together almost a little too well. Like a suit. That's right, a suit. What I am proposing to you all is that the Sheikah made the champions each a specialized power armor suit similar to the Iron Man suit, except that these suits were designed to augment the powers of each champion further with the power of the divine beasts, as well as to enhance their physical prowess on the battlefield and also potentially allow them to control the beasts by synchronizing with their Sheikah slates. Now, whilst this would be an awesome prospect to see within Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, seeing the champions blasting massive armies with Sheikah-powered suits of mechanized magic, this has other, more darker implications for our champions. Remember that the champions were collectively bested by Calamity Ganon, and the war was effectively lost when Ganon took control of the Divine Beasts and Guardians, but especially the Divine Beasts. The Divine Beasts aren't like the Guardians. They require a pilot to control them. The only reason we see them walking is because by the point Link reached them, they were under the control of Ganon. And then, when they weren't, they were under the control of a champion's spirit, haunting and inhabiting the metallic bodies of each beast. There is other evidence also furthering this point, such as the fact each beast can also be controlled by Link using a Sheikah slate, and each champion also had their own slates to control the beasts as well. Now, how does this relate to the fate of the champions and their insanely swole Sheikah-powered armor? Well, brace yourselves, because this gets really messy and extremely disturbing to think on. Calamity Ganon never took control of the Divine Beasts directly. Instead, he took control of the champions who controlled the beasts. When the champions rushed to the beasts and donned their power armor to gain the advantage in battle, Calamity took its chance to take control of their suits and quite literally trapped them in the suits, starving them and killing them slowly, controlling them like literal puppets of the flesh, forcing them to use their Sheikah slates, and in turn, the Divine Beasts as well, using them to serve their unwanted puppeteers' evil bidding. With all due respect, The fate of the champions is tragic beyond any words I could use to describe, as the protectors of Hyrule were forced against their will into destroying Hyrule and those they loved. Calamity turned them into literal living, breathing puppets. And let me just also say that this isn't really a massive stretch to suggest either. We've seen him do this before to Zelda herself in Twilight Princess by literally using his dark powers to inhabit the body of Zelda, possessing her. Also, to further justify the suggestion of dark puppetry at play. Looking back at those massive computer terminals Link activates prior to fighting any of the Blights, perhaps what these terminals really are is something much more than a computer, but also the cockpit in which a champion sits when piloting a divine beast. Evidence that can suggest this is that when Link interacts with the terminal, we see malice leaking directly from inside it. Then, shortly afterwards, we observe Sheikah energy exiting the terminal, thus indicating that the Blight was teleporting from inside the terminal. This is just it. Only the command of a champion is capable of controlling a divine beast, and because of this, Calamity could not simply, as I said earlier, take direct control of a beast. A champion would never have willingly served Calamity Ganon, hence why Ganon needed the bodies of the champions and their Sheikah slates. So, by taking possession of the suits when the champions equipped them, he was able to trap them and thus could effectively control their bodies and their slates, enslaving them physically to his will, thus turning the divine beasts upon Hyrule and its inhabitants via the forced and unwilling hands of the champions. Truly, it's tragic. By the time Link would find his way to fight the Blights, his friends would be long dead within the suits. This is why the Blights look somewhat misshapen. Their bodies, now a corrupted organic mass, had decayed over the many years. Honestly, is it any wonder the spirits of each champion remained within the mortal world so strongly? In fact, they could create or manifest into nearly corporeal bodies even. Spirits are often only seen lingering on in the living world when they die a tragic and/or traumatic death in some form of deeply regretful manner. The champions were clearly and completely denied their victory and purpose to such a point they were forced into causing the destruction of Hyrule and the people they dearly swore to protect and care for. Truly, the death of the champions is horrifying, and it doesn't make me feel much better or more comfortable personally knowing their spirits are freed and able to fulfill what little is left of their mission and purpose after the defeat of the Blights, but it does raise some further points. If the divine beasts are completed prior to the fight with Calamity Ganon, all 4 of the Blights can be seen integrated within Calamity Ganon itself. But if the divine beasts were skipped, then Link still ends up facing off against the 4 Blights individually prior to fighting Calamity Ganon, who, regardless, will still end up absorbing the Blights. At first glance, this might seem like a hole in the theory, as it raises the question of whether the suits really were created by the Sheikah or were just random amalgamations of Calamity. However, the answer to this question only serves to justify the theory further. When Link defeats any of the Blights, aka the suits with the bodies of the champions, regardless of whether it's in a divine beast or in Hyrule Castle, we all see the Blights disappear in a blinding flash of energy. This is relatively simple to explain. The Blights, or rather should I say, the corruption within the suits, aren't actually separate beings at all from Calamity Ganon, but rather instead the Great Calamity utilizing its corruptive powers to control the suits collectively at the same time. There is no separation of consciousness. The blights are not separate creatures, just lumps of corruptive mass that happened across the Sheikah's suits. When it became clear to Ganon that the suits of the now-dead champions could not defeat Link individually, Calamity simply used the inherent Sheikah technology within the suits and the champions to teleport them to him to absorb them in preparation of the inevitably predictable final battle between the hero of the wild and Ganon. Thinkers, the answers to the champion's dark fate is so simple, and it's been staring at you all the entire time. At least, that's what this theory stands to show anyway, and it does present a long string of evidence. But in all honesty, we can't know truly for certain until the Age of Calamity is released and we play and find out for ourselves. So till then, my thinkers, this is where we all stand. But what do you all think? Are the Sheikah suits real, or are they just a random work of evil genius formulated from a string of Guardian parts and Calamity Ganon's wicked ability to ad-lib technology he just barely took control of? And what about the dark fate of the champions? Well, let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe for more videos, and follow me over on Twitter for news and updates. If you want to support my channel and its content, you can do so either over on Patreon for $1 a month, getting you behind the scenes, or alternatively, you can wear your support proudly by purchasing this week's new shirt designs. If you want them, or any of the previous shirt designs, then head on down to my online store over on teespring.com. Links in the description below. Either way, thinkers, I'm well and truly grateful for all the support you've all shown me, from simply just enjoying my content, from liking, commenting, and sharing. So, sincerely and genuinely, I thank you all deeply from the bottom of my heart for that support. Speaking of support, if you love the channel art, please don't forget to go follow my channel artist, ElfspringArt, over on Instagram, and share some of that love and support over there too. Love ya, Elfie. That's a wrap, thinkers. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.